So we're living in a time when energy therapies are emerging. Chinese medicine is not new. Most of the literature describes it as techniques and technologies that are 5,000 years old. And they were able to identify through their sensitivities. This was not theoretical stuff. They were visionaries who could see the energies in the human body, and they identified meridians, pathways of energies that flow through our system and that exist in all living beings. And that's the basis of acupuncture, where acupressure points give us access to those energy meridians and effectively influence the way they flow. So that when there is a pathological condition, whether psychological or physiological, the use of those needles will neutralize imbalances in the energy meridians and restore well-being. Reflexology developed out of that, which accesses the same meridians from the soles of the feet. And we have modalities like Reiki, which is the imparting of healing energy through the hands. The quantum touch method that I mentioned earlier is a form of Reiki, in my experience far more intensified. Then we've got modalities that have emerged in recent years called holographic repatterning and kinesiology, all based on the same idea that there are energy fields within the body. And the only reason why these modalities can possibly work is because that assumption is true. So the best, in my opinion, the best of these energy modalities are the ones that combine energy interventions with cognition. So neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, is working with the energies of consciousness and language and the way our minds frame reality. And that has developed into a very powerful and very effective modality called psychoneuroimmunology. And look up these subjects on the internet if you want to get more information about them. There's a lot of information available. People like Brandon Bayes, has anyone heard of or done the journey process? Yeah. Certainly a really welcome breakthrough in her concept of cellular memory, how early memories of trauma, emotional trauma or emotional pain are stored in the cells of our body. And her healing methods are very powerful ways of accessing those cellular memories. So again, a great illustration of how energy interventions are combined with cognition. Thought field therapy was discovered by a clinical psychologist called Roger Callahan, roughly 25 to 30 years ago. Now, Roger Callahan was treating a woman with hydrophobia. She had been suffering all her life with a terror of contact with water. One can only speculate how she cleaned her body, but she could not get into a bath or a shower. She would probably have sponged herself with a damp sponge and, prayed for the best. So Roger Callahan was working with her and trying out a new form of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And he was convinced that this would be a breakthrough for her. But he was getting nowhere. Meanwhile, he had begun to do some research out the box of his conventional psychological training, his clinical training, and he was quite fascinated by acupuncture, the potential of acupuncture. And he knew a little bit about it. So here's what happened. He was sitting on the porch of his consulting rooms at his home where he consulted, and he was trying to condition this client of his, this lady with hydrophobia, to steal glances at the swimming pool. It was just in the middle distance, and overcome her fear. And he was working with her psychologically and trying to get her to see that there was no rational basis for her fear, etc., etc. So his intuition kicked in and he said, "You're feeling sick in the pit of your stomach. Do me a favor," he said, whatever her name was. I said, "I want you to just take this finger, your index finger, and I want you to tap here. And while you're tapping, I want you to think about that sick feeling in your stomach. Look at the water if you can, but if you can't, don't worry. The main thing is just feel that sick feeling in your stomach. She tapped for 2 minutes, only 2 minutes, humoring him. She thought he'd lost his marbles. And then she suddenly stopped, and she said, "It's gone." He didn't know what she meant. He said, "What do you mean it's gone?" He said, "I'm not feeling that sick feeling anymore." What happened next was really quite startling, especially to him. She got off a chair and she strode towards the water. He shouted at her, "Stop," because he was afraid she would jump in, and she no doubt had no idea how to swim. She turned around with a smile on her face and she said, "Don't worry, I know I can't swim." She laid down at the water's edge and started splashing her face. The hydrotherapy was cured from 2 minutes of tapping in this position. That was the foundation of TFT, thought field therapy, and he developed a very sophisticated range of tapping algorithms for different conditions. Tapping algorithms, in other words, sequences of acupressure points on which tapping takes place with the fingers, and the client or the practitioner can do the tapping as long as you know which points to tap on. And his system actually caught on very well, and a lot of people benefited tremendously from it. Also, a lot of information about this methodology on the internet, should you be interested. Now, he had a student, a retired engineer called Gary Craig, who decided that there was something rather cumbersome about Roger Callahan's method, all these sophisticated tapping algorithms, and he had a notion to simplify the system, from which was born EFT. Some really fascinating research, in my opinion. This is taken from a book called The Promise of Energy Psychology. It's co-authored by a man called David Feinstein, a clinical psychologist, together with Gary Craig, the founder of EFT, and an energy healer called Donna Eden. Some of you will have heard of Donna Eden, a person who's gifted with intuitive or psychic abilities and can see energies. So they did brain scans. They took a sample of a fairly large number, a comfortable number of patients with anxiety disorder, and they did brain scans. Now, this is the brain scan before treatment using energy psychology. There's a lot of red colors. This slide is not that clear, but I think it's clear enough for our purposes over here. There's a little bit of blue, but the red and the pink colors indicate highly dysfunctional or moderately dysfunctional ratios of brainwave rhythms. Now, after 4 sessions, there's a major shift in the color spectrum from these reds, which are now reduced in their spread, and there's a lot of blue. After 8 sessions, there's mostly blue and a little bit of red, and after 12, it's virtually all blue, which is a normal ratio and is representative of a client feeling absolutely relaxed and calm, no anxiety experience at all. So here's where it becomes very interesting. They did a comparison using the same brain scans between energy psychology, and the method that they used would have been probably thought field therapy, that method that we've mentioned before. And they also compared energy psychology with cognitive behavioral therapy firstly. And this is what they found, that the brain scans, the progression of brain scans and the end result were very similar, which in a way is a vindication of the energy method. Yeah? Because we've got a tried and trusted psychotherapeutic methodology called CBT. We know it works and so on and so forth. Energy psychology replicates that result. However, with energy psychology, far fewer sessions were required. Not only that, but it was much more enduring. After a 1-year follow-up, they found that the people that had been subjected to talk therapy, to cognitive behavioral therapy, had a much greater incidence of relapse. Not so with the energy psychology. Hardly anybody had relapse of their anxiety disorder. Here's where it becomes particularly fascinating. They then compared energy psychology with medication, psychiatric medication. The brain scans were unchanged. Nothing happened with medication. All that was happening, this is the postulate as a result of that research, was that the symptoms were suppressed. The patient didn't feel the anxiety, but the brain waves were completely unaffected by the medication. The anxiety was intact, was unaffected, it was there. There was no improvement in the underlying wave frequency imbalances. The medication, as we all know, has undesirable side effects, and the symptoms tend to return rather quickly, I'm afraid to say, when the medication is discontinued.